Well, hello again everybody and welcome back to Spoiler Warning, featuring myself, Tom Collihew, as we break down the biggest stories in wrestling news. We're going to be talking injuries today, not necessarily just the big one, but we'll definitely be touching on the big one as well. We're going to be talking Cody Rhodes' return schedule, as well as details about how he was injured, when to expect him back, and what contingencies are in place. We're also briefly, at least, going to be touching on AEW injuries and why AEW locker room members believe that these particular injuries are happening. So without further ado, we'll jump straight in. For those who don't know, my name is Tom Collihew. My name is just up there if you'd like the spelling. I'm a wrestling journalist who's broken some news such as the return of Becky Lynch to SummerSlam, the move of Sasha Banks and Naomi into the tag division when they did, and I've been ahead of the curve on Sasha Banks and Naomi for a little while now. Going further back, we're looking at The Rock working with Becky Lynch in the opening SmackDown, the return of CM Punk and his communications with AEW in the negotiation there, and plenty more as well. So, let's talk about Cody Rhodes first and foremost, before we jump into our usual system of Ask Me Anything, and the show goes until we essentially run out of questions. So Cody Rhodes did indeed pick up his injury while lifting weights in advance of the Hell in a Cell show. So while trying to essentially pump up his body a little bit more at the gym, his entire tendon has ripped off the bone, and it's caused the bodily harm that we've seen so many times since Hell in a Cell last night. It was a severe injury, and it is one that requires surgery. When it comes to the match itself at Hell in a Cell, there were many plans by the WWE in order to cancel or change the match, but Cody Rhodes was insistent on wrestling. As soon as Cody suggested that he would want to wrestle, Vince McMahon essentially cancelled all contingencies and said, okay, if he wants to wrestle, we will let him wrestle. Many in WWE at the moment believe the injury may be down to the strain and intensity of the WWE schedule. Cody Rhodes is fairly recent back to WWE, and he's working a lot of different live shows, a lot of different dark matches, and a lot of people in WWE firmly believe he may have been overworked, or essentially have overworked himself, as the requirement may have been in order to keep up with the WWE schedule. Those same people also believe the same of, for example, Boogs. And there are a few others currently injured or on the sidelines in the WWE, and many people, as I mentioned, do believe this may be down to the intensity of the WWE schedule. Now, Cody Rhodes is expected to receive his surgery on Thursday. He did have plans for SummerSlam. I do not believe those plans featured the top championships at this point. However, they will be put on hold, and Cody will receive his push when he does eventually return. Now, at the moment, Bobby Lashley is lined up to step into his position. He is now available, and though there were other plans in place for him, he may be swapped out of those because he will be the number one guy on Raw going forwards. The WWE have positioned Bobby Lashley until now, since WrestleMania, as the number 2 babyface on the roster behind only Cody Rhodes, because Cody Rhodes was en route to Roman. Bobby Lashley will now be the top guy, and Bobby Lashley will take his place. As regards when Cody is expected to return, the Royal Rumble 2023 is the earliest that the WWE are likely to put any creative plans together for Cody Rhodes. They are excited by the idea, of having him return at the event and pick up the win. While that's not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination, I do think that lines up with what the WWE like to do with their stars. Drew McIntyre on the SmackDown side and The Miz on the Raw side had been told to be available and at the arena should Cody not be up to the match. However, Cody impressed in the minor rehearsals that they were able to have, so this was cancelled. Essentially, Vince McMahon was convinced that Cody was able to perform and decided not to bring anyone else in who may be there to cover for him. Finally, to touch briefly on AEW injuries to names such as Jeff Hardy, CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, I've spoken to people backstage there, and those injuries are largely believed to be down to their bodies simply catching up with them. They've been working extremely hard. Jeff Hardy has been doing the Jeff Hardy thing. And as much as anything, CM Punk is still relatively fresh back to wrestling. And even though he's currently still recognized as the AEW champion, he hasn't been around that long. And it's not believed that his body is entirely up to the rigors yet. You have to build stamina over time. And from what I can tell, many people do believe it's simply too much too soon for CM Punk with the intensity that he's been putting himself under and that the company's been putting him under to compete at the level that he is doing so. That is the news on the injuries from myself, Tom Collihy. I'm now going to go to our usual format of Ask Me Anything. You go ahead and you ask your questions and I will endeavour to answer every single one. So if you're watching on YouTube, now would be the perfect time to give us a little thumbs up. We have 30 people watching and only 6 likes, so if you're able to boost that with a few thumbs up, that would be absolutely fantastic. And subscribe if you haven't. Over the course of yesterday, we went from 1,167 subscribers to 1,183, which means with 4 more subscribers, that number ticks up to the 1.19k, and that much closer to 1.2. So please do consider hitting like while you have a moment, subscribe if you haven't, and let's start talking about the questions that you guys have. Spider-Boss says, hi Tom, when we could see Cody back? The most likely scenario at the moment is the Royal Rumble in 2023. That seems the most likely time for that to happen. Steve says, hello Tom, was thinking of if Cody makes it back in time for the Rumble, it makes him the favourite to win it. Can see him eliminating Seth also when he comes back. Completely agree. At this point in time, Cody would definitely be the favourite for the Royal Rumble, and I would be surprised if betting companies don't start taking bets sooner rather than later. Spider-Boss says, I wish to see Sasha soon. SmackDown needs her. You may see her relatively soon. That is certainly in the planning at the moment. Brandon says, we are live. We are indeed. Welcome, Brandon. Spider-Boss says, is it me or WWE has no intention that AJ can beat Edge's stable? The WWE at the moment are very happy with the development of Edge's stable. AJ, Finn Balor and Liv Morgan are getting a push by association, but they are not necessarily the focus of the storyline. Bailey says, hello Tom, great turnout online for the watch along. Thank you kindly, Bailey. I think we did extremely well yesterday. More than 4,000 views first and foremost, but we also had a new record of 103 viewers at once. 103 viewers at once. Now, don't get me wrong, quite a few people did tune into the show and do regularly tune into the pay-per-view watch-alongs because they believe I'm going to be showing the show illegally pirated. I'm not going to do that, so they tend to pop in and pop out again. But we still got a pretty good average view duration, so it wasn't all of them. Sean says, hello Tom. Hello Sean, how you doing, mate? Spider-Boss says, in your opinion, what does SmackDown need to be a good show again? Much better writing. They have the talent, they have the people, they just need to give them something interesting to do. Sean says, Liv Morgan had a star-making performance last night. The latest in a long line. Her work against Becky Lynch way back when was certainly star-making in its efforts as well. I think this is the best Liv Morgan we've seen so far. I think she's constantly improving, and I think the connection with AJ Styles and Finn Balor will be very good for her. Simon says, Naomi's friend on Twitter was being criticising Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, and Cameron for their recent comments about Sasha and Naomi situation on recent podcasts. They did. That makes sense. There's plenty enough reason to do so. Simon also said just before we started, hey Tom, any Sasha news updates about her comeback? Her friend on Twitter said today they'll be back very soon in a few weeks. That is consistent with what I've already reported. So while I have no new news, I have reported more than anyone else has reported and have reported when I expect them back. Si says, hi Tom and all. Welcome Si, how you doing mate? Spider-Boss says, Cody out due to injury. Who will carry Raw? Bobby Lashley at this moment is going to be the top face. As regards the top star, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch are still considered top stars. Cody was going to be overtaking them. Looks like that's not going to happen in the end. Simon says, God bless Cody. Get well soon. Get well soon indeed. Noob says, hello. Welcome Noob. How you doing mate? And Jay Quick says, with that performance from Cody, I guess you could say he had adrenaline in his soul. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but still. Ew. Sean says, do you think WWE will stop advertising Cody while he is out? Yep, definitely. They're not going to advertise someone who's not currently available to use. Jay Quick says, do you think we hear from Cody tonight? I hope so. I would expect he will be able to sign off for a period, and just being able to go out and cut a promo will be everything he needs to do in order to have that moment with the fans. It's about loyalty of the fans as much as anything. Just being able to say to them, this is what's happened, this is why I'm going, but I'll be back. Ultimately, with how it happened, he's shown himself gutsy. He's earned a lot of respect from people who respect the individuals who put their bodies on the line. And I think he'll be missed. A lot of the WWE since WrestleMania has been built around him. In fact, even before WrestleMania, let's be fair. Hey Michael, how you doing, mate? Simon says it's still going to be Riddle versus Roman at Money in the Bank. How to phrase this? Roman wants that match to happen. Matt Riddle wants that match to happen. A lot of people in WWE Creative want that match to happen. It is not officially confirmed as of yet. Sean says, Cody said in a promo after Hell in a Cell went off air, he'll be on Raw tonight. Jermaine says, hi Tom, I hope you're doing well. Doing very well, thank you. Because I was up until 4 a.m, I've had myself quite a lot of little naps over the day, and it's been very, very worthwhile. Steve says, who would you like to see in both Money in the Bank ladder matches this year? Ooh, okay. I'd like to see Damian Priest involved. Bobby Lashley, certainly. On the SmackDown side, I'd like to see Gunther. Imagine a match that features both Gunther and Bobby Lashley. I think there's some good combinations there. On the women's side, I'd like to see Bayley. I'd like to see Sasha Banks. And I'd honestly quite like to see Shotzi. I think Shotzi can do very well in that environment. Jay Quick says, who is the new odds-on favourite to win Money in the Bank? I haven't checked the betting averages as of yet, but I've got to say Bobby Lashley's going to be up there. Also, Randy. Sean says, which team do you think gives Judgment Day their first loss? I don't think there are many teams right now that could be in that position. It depends if they rotate the board, as it were, and have someone like Omos involved. I think maybe Fight Night, if they continue to build Fight Night, as it were, could be very good in that spot. Failing that, the New Day moving to Raw to take on Judgment Day. The 2 days, I can see that working. BFG says, I think CM Punk has the ability to improve in the ring, even at his age when he comes back. Very possibly, he may need to change his style slightly and not wrestle 60-minute main events, though. That may have been an accident waiting to happen. Bailey says, there are fewer events per week post-pandemic than the days when the WWE was running 5-hour shows a week. If anything, there are more intense moves Cody is doing in a singles match, but the number of events shouldn't be the reason. It may not have been the reason... Sorry, let me rephrase that. Cody Rhodes has been working non-stop since returning to the company. It's not so much how things were post-pandemic, because with Cody it would be 6 years ago. It's having the stamina required to do that schedule. And you build up to the stamina required for that schedule by working hard and taking regular breaks. Rest days are important. So a lot of people in WWE simply believe that his body wasn't quite prepared for the schedule. Regardless of how many there actually are, the schedule that they have now simply might be a little bit too intense. Simon says, only news on Adam Cole's shoulder injury, Scorpio Sky's knee injury suffered on AEW Rampage, if TK may do a third interim AEW TNT champion or not if Scorpio is injured. They have not decided as regards the TNT Championship at this point. They are still in the assessment period, as is true of the injury from Rampage. They are still working out what they are going to do. As regards Adam Cole, should be out for a little while. I haven't got any further details, to be honest. I don't have many people in AEW, to be completely honest with you. But I'm confident that we'll see Adam Cole wrestling again soon. Michael says, if Liv doesn't win Money in the Bank or at least make it bigger with AJ and Finn, then I fear for her career. I do not. I don't fear for her career at all. If you look at where we are on SmackDown right now, for example, she would come in just under Ronda and Charlotte. She would be above everyone else there. She'd be above Lacey Evans, for example, regardless of the fact that Lacey Evans has had considerable pushes. On Raw right now, she's a fairly big deal. she's being pushed stronger than Alexa Bliss is, for example. So I'm not too worried. The WWE do have high hopes for her. I don't think she needs the Money in the Bank per se, or it's over. But I do think she needs to come out of this storyline with another storyline ready to go. Jermaine says, hey Tom, thanks for the watch along. I had a great time. Oh, you are very welcome, Jermaine. Thank you kindly for jumping in and chatting along with us and enjoying. The watch alongs are as much about all of you guys essentially giving me content than they are about me creating content. The fact that we've got a show that's live, I have plenty of comments to run through, plenty of questions to answer. It means I don't have to work particularly hard, and I can enjoy the fun as well, as it were. I can just jump in and have the fun too. We currently have 33 viewers and only 12 likes. If you're currently watching on YouTube, please remember to hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're currently watching on Twitch, please remember to follow if you haven't as well. Low Gamer says hello. Hello, Low Gamer. How you doing? Matthew Ham says, hey Tom, what matches are planned for Money in the Bank? The 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches, Roman versus Riddle seems very likely at this point. Ronda versus Natalya may be held for that event as well. Spider-Boss says, do you see Lashley beating Roman for the undisputed title? I'm not sure. I'd like to see it, but it would be a Saudi Arabia match at this point. I don't see Riddle, I don't see Orton, I don't necessarily see Drew winning either of the titles. I can see Bobby at Saudi Arabia winning one of them. I think at this point they have to split the titles before Survivor Series. That's the plan. They just need to get it done. Noob says, do you think Becky's feud with Asuka is over? I do not. I think we're going to get a little more Becky Asuka, and I think Asuka's going to come out the winner of that one, because certainly Asuka impressed a hell of a lot of people backstage in WWE last night during the show, and I'm very confident that they have good things lined up for her, including a title shot relatively soon. Ed Welcome says, according to crowd reports, Cody claimed he'll be on Raw tonight to address the situation. Source random people who said they were at the show on Twitter. Thank you for sourcing. Even if it's not the most reliable source, as it were, source anyway, because you never can tell. Low Gamer says, who do you see winning the 2023 Royal Rumble? At this point, Cody's a shoo-in. Cody seems like the, not just the obvious choice, but the easiest choice. Cody seems like the guy, as it were, and it just makes sense that he would be the one to do so. Jermaine says, because of Cody Rhodes' injury last night, does that change the plans for the upcoming draft? There were rumours that Becky and Seth were moving back to SmackDown. I guess that's not going to happen now. Becky and Seth, to my knowledge, were not going to move back to SmackDown. Ronda was potentially moving to Raw to come and meet Becky. But Seth and Becky have been moved to Raw last year to be the top of the brand for the foreseeable future. It's not a case of 1 year. They're going to be the top people for a while. Sean says, speaking of Cameron, she called out Cody and said he was faking his injury, said that any athlete wouldn't compete with that kind of injury. I mean, we saw what happened to his body. It's not... I don't understand how you can fake that particular level of burst blood vessel, personally. Cameron has had some terrible takes recently. Jay Quick says, could you see us getting Seth versus Cody at Mania if Seth wins the title? If Seth wins the title, yes. I don't see Seth winning the title. I don't think they'll return to this particular feud for a while now. I think Cody is someone who may well end up on the SmackDown side, though. Keep an eye out for that one. Spider-Boss says, I think the only ones who can beat Edge's stable is the Bloodline. I mean, nobody beat Roman and the Usos. That would be a fun combination. While I'm a little bit sick of seeing Edge and Roman interacting, as it were, that's certainly a new and exciting way to do it. We just need Naomi to be involved on the Bloodline side. Andrew Quinn says, what a match by Cody and Seth last night. When I've seen his massive bruise, I was like, bloody hell. Ever since his comeback to WWE, he's been incredible. Did you see Cena Insta post with US title? I didn't, but it's typical John Cena to be that person. Guy's a massive troll, and he knows what gets people talking. Simon says, from Cody's insane ECW like Dudley Boy's table fire spot versus Andrade in AEW Dynamite Deathmatch last year, now the Hell in a Cell with Seth, what a very gutsy performer he is for the fans. He certainly throws his entire body at it. I can promise you that. Also, just to be clear, Simon, you don't need to use hashtags in the YouTube chat. It's not necessary. Spider Boss says, any update about Kenny Omega's return? None whatsoever. As far as I can tell, Kenny Omega does not know when Kenny Omega is going to return. That's making it very difficult for any wrestling journalist to know as well. Sly says, random fact, Rhea Ripley's new look last night was an accident. Her gear never arrived, per her Twitter. Sounds about right. Previously, if she's been unable to, if she hasn't had her gear, she's borrowed trousers from someone else. That being Damian Priest, her tag team partner, so she was not able to do so. This is a woman who's literally thrown a pair of pants on in Gorilla if necessary. So if they were wrestling in a separate match, they would have just genuinely shared trousers that night. But unfortunately not able to do so. Sean says, do you see Liv Morgan winning a title later this year? Potentially yes, but I think it would be tag titles. I think she has potential to win the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship, but I think that will be next year. I think all of the focus right now is going to be on Bianca Belair and the Ronda versus Becky Lynch storyline. I think someone's got to dethrone Bianca Belair, and I think Liv Morgan could be someone who's involved in that. I personally would probably transition from Bianca Belair to Alexa Bliss in the UK, I think, more likely, and then closer to WrestleMania time, go from Alexa Bliss to Liv Morgan and just have them feuding. Spider Boss says, if Sasha wins Money in the Bank like Brock did in 2019, a lot of fans will be mad. Also, a lot of them will be happy. Jaden says, hey Tom. Hello Jaden, how you doing, mate? And Simon says, off topic Tom, what are your thoughts on England's very poor UEFA Nations League defeat versus Hungary at the weekend? It's exactly what I expected. Awful. The England team is not good. And I don't think, even though we got good performances out of people like Harry Maguire, he spent the last year being the absolute worst player you could possibly see in a Manchester United shirt, and his confidence is gone. Genuinely not a bad player, but exposed at the level he's playing at. Spider-Boss says, Asuka's performance last night was awesome. A double ankle lock on Becky and Bianca was awesome. People backstage in WWE are very excited by the crowd reaction that Asuka got. Particularly Asuka chants, big cheers, the big pop when she came in, and it's very much got them very interested in what comes next. Simon says, Liv's right thigh was heavily strapped up last night. Is she okay? Hope so. She is indeed okay. It's not a serious injury. It's a bit of a knock that she's selling a little bit harder to try and say, oh yeah, Rhea Ripley did a lot of damage to me. It's just a bit of extra push on the sell. Steve says, can back up Ed's sourcing. People I know who are at Hell in a Cell last night told me the same information about Cody being on Raw tonight. Thank you very much there, Steve. And this is why, even if you're not entirely trusting the source, share it. Sometimes I'll come around and say, yeah, that's not a trustworthy source, at which point you've learned a valuable lesson. Low Gamer says, what about the 2023 Women's Royal Rumble? See, this is a harder question to answer. Logically, we're getting Becky versus Ronda. That's going to happen. But you don't need either woman to win the Rumble to get there. I would rather whoever challenges for the Raw... I would rather whoever challenges for the other Women's Championship win the Royal Rumble. So I'd be looking at a Liv Morgan. I think Liv Morgan would be an absolute perfect Royal Rumble winner. I think she's well placed to do so, and I think the WWE are largely behind her. It's certainly possible that Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair is a feud that takes us into the fall, and then we have Liv Morgan resurfacing against Rhea Ripley. I'd take that. I'd be very happy with that, in fact. Sorry, guys. Still not 100%. I'm looking forward to having a few days off talking. Noob says, that sequence at Hell in a Cell of Asuka doing those combos, I don't know how Asuka, who is 40 years old, does stuff like that. I don't know how she does that. Talent, effort, and execution. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hypnosis Bro says, I don't know, Tom. I think the Asuka-Becky feud is over. I see Becky versus Bianca now, especially how the match ended. There was definitely still some heat between Becky and Bianca, as it were, and the plan is very much still to have them encounter each other again. But at some point, Asuka is still going to factor in. After all, this was meant to be Becky versus Asuka at the pay-per-view, and separately, Bianca versus Naomi. They potentially lost out on a Hell in a Cell match as well, which is worth pointing out. Spider-Boss says, what's next for Seth Rollins? Lots of possibilities. He's been taking consistent beatings. I'd probably give him a little bit of time off to recover from that, to be honest. But I think we're more likely to see Bobby Lashley and Seth Rollins competing, or Kevin Owens and Bobby Lashley competing at some point. Seth has a number of people lined up to take him on because he's the top heel in the company right now. And yes, because of Roman's unavailability, I'm including Roman in that list. Steve says, haven't had a chance to look back at the video from yesterday. How did the watch-along poll go? Well, it went extremely well. Are you joining me for it, mate? Are we doing a joint watch-along? Could be fun. Devon says, who do you see winning both Money in the Bank matches? I'm going to say Bobby. As regards to women, it's a lot harder to state. I'm going to go Rhea, I think. I think I'll go Rhea. Simon says, it's very big if it happens given Dwayne's schedule. Do you see Roman versus The Rock at Mania 39, a non-title feud or match? I do not. The main reason I don't see it is because it's being said that this was going to happen last year and the year before and the year before. I don't see it happening because it's taking so long to get there. Hypnosis Pro says, the Asuka combos are great. I love the fact she's kept using her ass as a weapon. Brilliant. The hip attack, yeah. It's less obnoxiously so than some wrestlers in the way that they use certain body parts as offensive moves. I don't know why people find those particular body parts so offensive, but, you know, we live in a strange time. Asuka, though, she uses her ass to taunt her enemies, and that's always been a character trait that I quite enjoy. Jay Quick says, do you think anybody was trying to talk Cody out of the match last night due to injury? No. There were definitely discussions, and quite serious discussions, about, okay, are you actually okay to wrestle? Because if you're not, we got to make some distance and we got to say it's not happening. He was questioned significantly and at serious length, and he confirmed repeatedly, I'm good, I'm going to wrestle. Shinso here says, what's good, Tom? Welcome, Shinso. How you doing, mate? Kevin says, WWE plan to have Ronda versus Natalya for Money in the Bank. I don't know if that's been confirmed by anyone, but that's what I expect to happen. Douglas Bini was asking, any update on plans for Money in the Bank? Just what I've already said. The Roman Riddle match, the Ronda Natalya match is likely for it, and the 2 Money in the Bank matches so far. Jermaine says, hey Tom, do you think we get a Stone Cold Bret Hart moment at next year's Royal Rumble between Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes in the Rumble? Think how great that moment will be. By which do you mean that Cody Rhodes is going to be eliminated, cheat his way back in, eliminate Seth Rollins, and then it goes down in the history books that he wins when he actually didn't? Is that what you're going for? Hypnosis Bro says, when is Bayley back? Could we see her tonight? We could potentially see her tonight. I think we're more likely to see her on Friday. So I said, see, you don't get this insight anywhere else. Shared pants info for the win. What can I say? It's I still remember when Rhea Ripley lost the WrestleMania match against Charlotte Flair. And PW Insider reported next day that Rhea Ripley basically had been deported. And I remember mentioning on a live show that day that, yeah, Rhea Ripley had looked at that report while sat at home and been like, am I? Why did nobody think to tell me? She then, of course, posted a picture of the fact that she was still very much there. So there are certain people and certain wrestlers I do have quite a bit of information about. And yeah, little bits of insight like that, maybe a bit of a tell. Simon, no news at the moment on Sting. They are being extremely careful with him, so they're giving him as much time as he needs. Sean says, apparently a source within Warner Brothers Discovery told PW Insider that late last week, an edict was issued to remove MJF from promotional spots and commercials for AEW programming going forward. That edict was received from Tony Khan. Tony Khan told him to do that. It is part of the overall work. Sean says, who would be Liv's partner if she won the tag titles? Well, a lot of people have suggested Alexa Bliss. KJ Welcome says, what's up, Tom? Congrats on the big night last night of all the views. Good showing by a good host. Thank you kindly for that, KJ. I very much appreciate it. It was a hell of a show. I do really enjoy the watch parties, as you all know. The pay-per-view ones just as much, even though they last so damn long. It's going to be very exciting when I'm able to monetize again, hopefully for Money in the Bank and SummerSlam, because my word, if we get 4,000 views, that's some ad revenue, isn't it? That is some ad revenue. Steve says that'll be quite fun. Jermaine, perhaps even a 1994 Rumble finish with Luger and Brett could be fun as well. Let's not make it like Batista and Cena back in 2005 for the sake of Vince's quads. That would of course be a draw and both men get championship shots. Could work. Could work. Kevin says, what's next for Becky Lynch? I do believe we're going to see a little bit more between Becky and Asuka while they essentially deal with their individual heat, and Becky does have another opportunity coming against Bianca. Sean says, would you say Hell in a Cell was better than In Your House? Well, no, still haven't watched In Your House. I'm exhausted and I'm catching up on sleep at the moment. I'm watching it tomorrow. Michael says, for all the people backstage impressed with Asuka, where have they been for the last 4 years or so? This is nothing new. This is nothing new, and that's true, but there's a reason that Asuka has had multiple championship reigns and the length of championship reign in NXT. A lot of people do very much enjoy Asuka's work, and they want to have her involved in championship matches. Now, admittedly, she is something of a victim of the rise of the man. Asuka was supposed to be facing off against Becky Lynch one-on-one for the SmackDown Women's Championship with Becky Lynch as the heel. On the same WrestleMania, so WrestleMania 35, when it was going to be Charlotte versus Ronda one-on-one, which did not end up happening one-on-one because Becky Lynch became undeniable. Asuka's had quite a bit of bad luck, unfortunately, but she's come back absolutely flying, and the WWE are very happy about that. Hector says, Tom, did we ever figure out what caused AJ to bleed all over the ring last night? I wonder if that had an impact on the outcome of if Judgment Day, or if Judgment Day was winning regardless. Judgment Day was winning regardless. It had no impact on the finish at all. When AJ was thrown out of the ring, he was supposed to be thrown out of the ring. He still showed for all of his spots, and ultimately there was no difference in what the match would have been if he hadn't been injured. I have not been able to find out what exactly happened. I don't think he's entirely sure what exactly happened, to be honest. Spider Boss says, without Cody on Raw, who will be the top attraction of the red brand? Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins will revert to being the top people on Raw. Becky Lynch is considered the top draw on Raw at this point in time. Cody was being elevated to that spot, while Becky Lynch was still considered the top draw. Essentially, they're looking at Becky as Roman at this point in time. Steve asks, which WWE superstars are in desperate need of moving shows in the next WWE draft? Now, in the next WWE draft, there is a lot of people who could really benefit. It's hard to say who desperately needs to move over per se, but there's a few people who could genuinely feel a massive benefit from a small change. If I'm going to pick one, I'm picking Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley on SmackDown for me right now, against Gunther, against Roman. There's a lot of good that you can find there. Even just a renewal of the feud with Sami Zayn, I think that could be a lot of fun. We've also still got Drew McIntyre there, and even though we've had that feud a lot, I do think it would be a big help to have that sort of good chemistry always in the back pocket. I also think there's untapped potential in more Bobby Lashley versus Sheamus. We saw them a little bit in the middle to last year's WrestleMania, but not enough for me to be happy. When it comes to the women's side, Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan would hugely benefit from a move, as would Raquel Rodriguez on the other side. I think Raquel Rodriguez moving to Raw to work with the Bianca Belairs and the like would be very, very handy. Whereas Liv Morgan, if you move her over to SmackDown where you've got a potentially heel Naomi in the bloodline for her to wrestle, you've got Ronda Rousey for her to wrestle, you've got Sasha Banks for her to wrestle, you've got a very good time ahead of you. Jinso says Asuka was always a fan favourite. Wish she would change a little with this comeback wardrobe or something. Asuka or Kana, very talented. Kana is not someone that WWE ever want to really push, I tell you that. KJ says time for Seth to start winning, then he needs to drop down the card and start taking on people such as Ezekiel. Got to Steve, we'll set something out. KJ says him losing a lot doesn't hurt, but he deserves something, especially if he was supposed to win the WWE title earlier this year. He was supposed to be going into WrestleMania, defending the WWE Championship against Big E and losing it back to him. Things really, really changed. And Seth is the one who really, really missed out, even though Big E's another one who really missed out as well. Jay, that's me, says peace to the chat. Welcome, Jay. How you doing? KJ says, I think Liv and KO should win Money in the Bank or even Seth. Seth as a briefcase holder is just a guaranteed good time. Bailey says, I know WWE doesn't want to see him out, but they could really sell Cody Roman for WrestleMania. They could. They absolutely could. And that may have already been the plan. Shinsu's suggestion is a vacation as well. Fair enough. I get that. Kelvin says, rumours said Stephanie McMahon has been forced out of WWE. I'm not aware that Stephanie McMahon has been forced out of WWE. She is taking a sabbatical. She is still a part of the WWE. And while her work is being done by Nick Khan, it means that no one has been hired to replace her. If she was being forced out, she would have been replaced. Hypnosis Bro says, we already have had 5 matches involving Becky and Asuka in 2 months. I hope it's over for now. Also, logically speaking, Asuka got pinned, Becky didn't. Surely that means that Money in the Bank, it's Becky Bianca. No, could be. Yeah, it absolutely could be. But that would just mean Asuka in the Money in the Bank ladder match. It's one of those events, Money in the Bank, where there's no real losers. As long as you're on the card and in the matches, you're going to be involved. James says, McIntyre wins Money in the Bank and calls his shot at Clash at the Castle. Firstly, hi James, how you doing? And secondly, I believe he's already called his shot. John says, do we get any call-ups tonight? I don't believe we're getting any call-ups tonight, no. We'll start to see the build to Money in the Bank. The next round of call-ups will likely come after SummerSlam. Simon says, is it going to be Bianca versus Alexa at Money in the Bank and versus Asuka or Becky at SummerSlam? Very possibly. Alexa, I don't feel, is being elevated into that position as of yet, though. I think we're more likely to see something involving Becky at Money in the Bank, let's say, while Becky is still being distracted by Asuka, and then we get the Asuka-Becky feud finalised at SummerSlam, while Bianca goes on to face Alexa there, rather than the other way around. Alexa needs a little more heating up first, in my mind. Jay says, since Cody Rhodes is injured, do we get any NXT calls for both brands? No, not at this point. Raw has more than enough people to compensate, and SmackDown, while it does need people, it hasn't actually lost anyone. Spider-Boss says, Rhea and Bianca and Liv and Ronda can be the ones who take the place of the 4 horsewomen. Well, Rhea, Bianca and Ronda are in position to do that, and they are very much planned to be stepping up and taking those spots. Liv, not so much as of yet, but she's making people very, very happy, and that's all you really need to do to get there. Sai says, AEW being real conservative on injury news for their roster. Punk, Danielson, Sting, Omega, etc. I respect that. To be fair, the WWE also tries to be really conservative with their injury news. The difference is that wrestling journalists, as soon as they hear about an injury in WWE, will find out as much as they can and then share it, whereas when they hear information about an injury in AEW, they become strangely silent. Michael says, can Becky and Bianca stop going against each other? Shortly, yes. There is going to be at least one more match. At least one more match. Joey says, who's going to be the top star on Raw now that Cody is injured? Becky Lynch will still be the top star on Raw. She was the top star on Raw before Cody got there. She's the top star on Raw even now. Bobby Lashley will be replacing him as the top face of the brand. Edward says, I still think Bayley deserves a single title match at Mania. You and me both, mate. You and me both. There isn't too much focus on the 4 horsewomen at the moment. That's actually being pared back as we go. So I'll be interested to see if she gets it. But certainly she's the one who hasn't really had that opportunity. So it could well happen. Sean says, happy birthday to Drew McIntyre. KJ says, AJ was in the ring, bleeding too, so I think it went to plan, but it did seem a bit rushed at the end. To be fair, with the tempo of the matches, it's hard to tell what seems rushed. All I know is that AJ showed up for all his spots, and the finish happened exactly as intended. Hypnosis Bro says, what's next for Bianca? Well, she's not out of the woods yet. With the women she's already competed against, Becky Lynch and Asuka are still very much in the title picture going forwards. Steve says, would love Bobby Lashley to move to SmackDown. Great choice, Tom. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Is this for a video? And if so, where can people find it and when? KJ said, Bobby hasn't been on SmackDown in over, what, 10 years? I'd love to see that change. It just makes the most sense to me. Hypnosis Pro said, loved Bobby parading with a replica title. Was unexpected but so much fun. Love the crowd interaction. The crowds have really embraced face Bobby Lashley, and it's one of those where all the WWE ever had to do to turn him face was get out of his way. They've done that, and he's made it work brilliantly. Sean says, I'd like to see Sheamus versus AJ Styles. That sounds like fun. I feel Sheamus needs to be elevated back towards the top level and just given the right to put on banger week after week. I'd like him as a final boss door development, so in order to get to him you have to beat Butch, then you have to beat Ridge Holland, and then you have to beat Sheamus, but all in one night. I think if he did an open challenge week in, week out, where it was like, okay, you have to take on Butch. You didn't win. You have to take on Butch. You didn't win. You have to take... Oh, you won. Okay, well, now you got to take on Rich Holland. No, right now. You didn't win. Oh, fail. Next week, oh, no, you got to start on Butch again. I feel you'd be building people up there in a good way. Because when you finally get to Sheamus, you're already tired. You've already wrestled 2 people. It's not fair. So at that point, you can still lose and then go on to, for example, a pay-per-view one-on-one match. I think that's just an interesting storyline that I'd enjoy. KJ says, do you think Seth is upset at all? Why? For what reason? From what I can tell, Seth Rollins is extremely happy with his job, extremely happy with the work that he does, and the WWE consider him amongst their absolute best. Spider-Boss says, apart from Becky, who is the other woman considered a draw by WWE? There are many women considered draws by the WWE, including Bianca Belair, being considered one of the top draws on Raw at the moment, Ronda, Charlotte, Sasha, naturally, and a number of others who fit certain demographics. Jermaine says, no, Tom, always thinking like a heel. What I meant was Seth thinks he has his chance to win the Royal Rumble, then Cody's music plays, out comes Cody, who then eliminates Seth and wins the Rumble. Okay, yeah. I do always think like a heel. You've got me there, Jermaine. You've got me there. Captain Buzzy says, hello, just popping in. Well, hello, Buzzy, and thank you very much for popping in. Hope you're well. Moxley says, Tom, since Cody's injured, who's going to dethrone Roman and when? Good question. Would love to know the answer to that. John says, why did WWE keep on running Becky versus Bianca? Does it make them money or something? Putting the as strange as this is going to sound, you can learn a lot about how the WWE plans their wrestling feuds by watching the battle of the brands on Up Up Down Down between Xavier Woods and Tyler Breeze. I'm going to say Tyler Breeze. Prince Pretty. You'll see the way that the system is built so that people of greater popularity grow faster when working with people of greater popularity. And the most exciting feuds feature the biggest names. Not necessarily the best matches, but the biggest names. Essentially, Becky is building Bianca as high as she possibly can. That's why they keep doing the match, to make sure everyone sees it, everyone gets over by association, and everyone gets that rub. Simon is predicting that Miro is going to be the new AEW Interim World Heavyweight Champion. Interesting. Bailey says, R.E. Stephanie. WWE corporate website today announced Catherine Newman has been named Executive Vice President and Head of Marketing. She was the Chief Marketing Officer of Manchester United. That's not directly in reference to Stephanie. There is a slight difference between a Head of Marketing and a Chief Brand Officer, but there is definitely an overlap there. So that's a good spot, Bailey, and thank you very much for sharing that. Sean says, I don't think Alexa is going to gain a lot from facing Nikki and Doudrop. She needs better building up to be a challenger for Bianca. And while that's true, think about the fact that Nikki and Doudrop are getting a benefit from this. Think about that for a moment. Because the biggest benefit doesn't go to the most popular person. It goes to the least popular person. If you put Drew Gulak in the ring with Charlotte Flair doesn't benefit. Drew Gulak sure does. This is how you get over. So while Alexa will have to kick into gear at some point, I think that'll be next month. And I think for now, Nikki and Doudrop deserve the opportunity to at least be involved there, though I do think they're all going to end up being friends. Noob says, Liv Morgan is making everyone happy when she teams up with the original leaders of Bullet Club. Yep, you can't really lose, can you? You really can't. Hector says, Tom, being a WWE fan, why do you feel like it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if Max Dupree, first client, is a repackaged Cameron Grimes with a clean-cut look and a new name? That it happens, but with him having done everything possible in NXT, it wouldn't surprise me. Now that's an idea I did not consider. And you know what? That sounds like fun. And I think that's actually consistent with the Cameron Grimes character we've had over the last few years, which is of constant evolution, but always moving towards something in particular. I'm excited for that as a concept. That would just be fun. Moxie says, Tom, I think that Bianca needs to turn face when she loses the title. Bianca already is face, so I'm not sure what you mean. Shinso says, Tom, no one ever mentions Io Shirai. She's as close to Asuka as anyone in terms of talent. Is her English holding her back, or too many Asians on the roster, or she's leaving when her contract is up like Kairi Sane. Now, Kairi Sane did sign a new contract with the WWE, but she signed a contract with NXT Asia, which did not launch due to the global pandemic, so it didn't actually happen, and her contract was basically just held. It was no longer a wrestling contract, and that's why she had to wait to leave to go to Stardom. There are reports on this on my YouTube channel in quite some depth. I was the first and only person to support on this contract, the first and only person to report about the NXT Asia plans, and so on and so forth. When it comes to Io Shirai, there are interesting elements here because they keep very quiet about Io Shirai. There's been rumours that she wants to go back to Japan, but there's never been any evidence suggesting there's any real basis in fact there. So it's a difficult one to track. Io Shirai, for me, should have been called up a long time ago. And she certainly would be a great person for someone on the SmackDown side to say, she's going to represent us at Money in the Bank, and then just keep her. It's just a case of actually getting her involved. Now, there is definitely a language barrier, and WWE writers are concerned that there's going to be a lot of what chants. This has also affected Asuka's push in the past, because when the fans start chanting what in the middle of an Asuka promo, the WWE stops giving Asuka promos. And when you stop giving someone promos, you stop giving someone personality. So if you are a what chanter, please shut the hell up. Hypnosis Bro says, I want Seth Rollins to shake Cody's hand tonight. Say something like, I'm going to win the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship. When you're back, you'll get your shot. Just give me delusional Seth. No, what you're doing there is getting face Seth. Face Seth. Which isn't impossible, but also not that likely. Brandon wants Sheamus to be made a face again. I cannot argue with that. I like that as a concept. Simon says, your score prediction for the England versus Germany UEFA Nations League tomorrow night at Wembley on Channel 4, Tom. I'm going to go 7-1 to Germany. I would just like to reiterate, my national football team is not good. Buzzy says a top-level Sheamus is a great Sheamus. Would definitely love to see him in such a position. He's ready to go. He's ready to be elevated, and I think SmackDown needs him. KJ says Lashley is genuinely a likeable guy. Oh, absolutely. Really honest in interviews as well, and I really appreciate that as an interviewer. Dimitar says, hi, Tom. What did I miss? We did give an update, which you can always drop back and see, on the Cody Rhodes injury situation, how long he's expected to be out, what the plans are for his replacements, as it were, and why many people believe the injury happened. So, by all means, check that out. Justin said, Rollins for Money in the Bank. Again, wouldn't be a bad show. Wiggly, how you doing, mate? Welcome. KJ says, when I first started watching wrestling, Sheamus was on top. Good times, along with guys like Ziggler. Yeah, Ziggler's in an interesting spot right now, isn't he? Jermaine says, I have a feeling that Bianca will lose the title before the UK pay-per-view because whomever takes the title off Bianca is going to do a title swap with Ronda. Then Ronda moves over to Raw in the draft. That's what I see happening, and that's why I think she's going to lose that championship in and around that spot. Because it looks like the actual draft will come after the UK show and before the Saudi Arabia show. Hypnosis Bro says, will there be any qualification matches for Money in the Bank, or will they just you, and you are in the match? They could do qualification matches on the men's side, which is a situation they've been in before. Certainly on SmackDown, on the women's side, they can't do qualification matches. Justin says, Bliss is a draw as well. Thank you, I did forget to name Bliss. I'm a big trading cards guy. Her cards sell for good money. That's an interesting indicator you've chosen there, Justin. It's certainly accurate. There are lots of different ways to show someone is a draw. YouTube views, for example. Twitter followers, as an example. Trading cards is certainly an interesting one to call out, and I think that's a good shout. Yeah, it says obviously trading cards and drawing power isn't the same thing, but people aren't rushing to buy Mace cards. No, you're absolutely right. I think you're actually onto something quite good there. It's certainly not a be-all and end-all. There are lots of little ways to track drawing power, but it's certainly something I'd be paying attention to. Wiggly believes that MJF will be the interim champ. Well, if that happens, then he's beating CM Punk when CM Punk returns. Spider-Boss says, after all the times I've seen Becky versus Bianca, I think they are a female version of Roman versus Brock. Roman versus Brock was actually a lot more spread out than this. Simon says, love that pick for men's Money in the Bank. Justin, Alexa is a very big megastar, underrated draw. Spider-Boss says, did Shotzi get over after her short rivalry with Sasha in 2021? No, but she actually... Here's the thing. It's not over, not over. It's not a yes or no. Over is a spectrum. So That feud made her more over. Now, admittedly, let's say she got more over. Well, then she was off TV for a bit. In fact, she was off TV for a lot. She was off TV for actually quite a long time. But then recently she's been back on TV. Not with Sasha Banks, though. So it's not really a big deal. But she has been back on TV. Featured fairly regularly. And she got locked in a cupboard. So, over as a concept is just more people knowing your name. Sasha Banks did her a favour, but she has lost momentum since then. Moxley says, this Friday, Gunther is winning the Intercontinental Championship from Ricochet. Yeah, can't argue with that. Sean says, didn't Bayley build up Bianca like Becky is doing? Yes, Bayley did. And Bianca went from here to here. And then she worked with Sasha, and she went from here to here. Now she's working with Becky, and she goes from here to here. You can always be more over, is the thinking. Kevin says, wait, Becky Lynch a draw, why does Raw ratings drop? Raw ratings drop no matter who is on the show. They have dropped year on year no matter who's on the show. You can't say John Cena's not a draw, but while he was there, people switched off. You can't say The Undertaker's not a draw. While he was there, people switched off. Shawn Michaels, people switched off. You can't track the ratings and say that's how you measure a draw. There is way more to it than that. KJ says, to be fair, that's how you get built up. You have to start beating talents lower down the card. Also, before Alexa came back, Doudrop had gone MIA, so it's beneficial to all involved. Also, you can't have Alexa beating Becky, Asuka, Rhea, etc. on Raw every week, because you'll kill big matches. Exactly. I think they found a good spot for Alexa right now, and it's actually beneficial to everyone involved. Simon says, do you think Roxanne Perez wins the NXT Women's Breakout Tournament? Yes, absolutely I do. Michael wants Bianca to turn heel. Personally, I think she's too generic as a face. Interesting. Okay. I get that. I think that with Drew McIntyre at times as well, so I get where you're coming from. Moxie agrees. Bianca needs to turn heel. Wiggly says, what is actually happening with Io Shirai then? I have absolutely no idea. It's extremely difficult to track what's happening with Io Shirai because everyone just goes really quiet about her. So I'm honestly not sure. Jermaine says, listen to Tom because he is correct, which is lovely. So why Sasha and Naomi were mad because they wanted to face Doudrop and Nikki Ash at a pay-per-view. It'll be interesting to see, upon the return of Sasha Banks and Naomi, whenever that may happen, how much my reporting gets mentioned. As like the one guy who reported that they'll be returning, how much do you think my reporting will actually feature in the mainstream? I'll give you a hint. 0. Which is why I've got to say thank you to certain individuals who have been spreading the word. And that's been really boosting my numbers recently. So thank you. Wiggly says, when people chant the what chants during Asuka's promos, it's kind of racist. Yes. Sean says Io's currently out of an injury, which is true. Hope she had a call-up along with Indy after SummerSlam. I have been hoping for that call-up for a while. I'm annoyed it's never happened. Moxie is imagining Riddle versus Samoa Joe, which is never a bad shout and always a good idea. Jermaine says, I say that because Doudrop and Nikki would have gotten a huge rub for just being in the ring with Sasha and Naomi, let alone a whole program, that and a title match at a pay-per-view. And that is what Sasha and Naomi wanted. They wanted to give that rub. Even if they wouldn't necessarily win the match, they would still benefit from it. Wiggly says, lastly, it's funny. You probably heard how he had an accident at the Newcastle house show. When he came to the ring at the O2, he went and checked all the ropes before giving a thumbs up to the crowd who all cheered. Glad he could make light of the whole issue. That is pretty good. You have to be able to laugh at yourself because I saw the accident and it was hilarious. Demental says, anything new on Sasha and Naomi? Nothing new at this point in time. I'm still expecting them back at the same time as I previously reported. But at this point in time, be aware that's the only report out there stating their return schedule. Super says, hey Tom. Hello Super, how you doing? Moxie suggests maybe Rhea dethrones Bianca. Rhea, I think, is a shoo-in for that option, yes. Super says, is this a guarantee that Cody will win the Rumble? It is not a guarantee that Cody will win the Rumble. We don't know for certain that he'll be back in time, for one thing. Spider-Boss says, I always wonder why WWE would be a title swap again instead of having new champs. Because they don't want to take the championships away from people just because they're drafted. Champions deserve to be champions. Hector says, I understand the praise for Cody's performance, well warranted, but Seth put a damn good performance as well, and he's doing career work. It's crazy to think that he's 0-3 in his last 3 pay-per-view matches, and is still one if not one of the top draws on the roster. Very true, and it's also worth remembering that he lost pretty regularly to Edge as well, and has still kept up this momentum. Michael says, we'd love to see Ricky Starks as interim champ. Interesting. Not a bad shout at all. Simon says, do you see Seth winning the men's Money in the Bank? No. WWE title? No. And getting a big push very soon? No. Because he deserves it with all the very recent losses. I don't think any of that is going to happen, but I do think Seth Rollins will be a championship holder at some point next year. Sean says, Lily is a big selling item for WWE. That is one way to show Alexa is a draw. It is. It absolutely is. It's amazing how often you'll see people who have decided that someone isn't a draw or is being buried or etc, etc, etc. Lana was a huge draw for the WWE. In her feud with Rusev when she married Bobby Lashley, Lana was a huge draw. She regularly received on her YouTube clips more views than Raw, meaning people were literally tuning in who weren't watching regularly. She was a draw, and in many ways that launched the Bobby Lashley that we're seeing now. Super says, my favourite is Danielson. I would love to see Danielson versus Tanahashi or Goto. And you know what? So would Danielson. He would love that too. Dimitar says, I've seen some fans blaming Sasha for what's happening in Shotzi, and I think it's total BS saying she buried her and all. Absolutely didn't happen. Absolutely not. Working with Sasha Banks is an elevation for anyone. Sorry, one sec. Oh. Working with Sasha Banks is an elevation for anyone in Shotzi's position, and that should be respected. Simon believes that Mox is going to come back to the WWE very soon. Well, that may have something to do with the fact that his contract is technically expired now, but we'll wait and see if it actually happens. Mox says, Drew Fink needs to turn heel because I think fans will start to boo Drew when he wins the world title. I don't think they'll do it yet. I would very much like it if, after winning the world championship, he then looked at turning heel. That would work for me. Spider Boss prefers Becky as a babyface. True, but they need a heel at the top to elevate people such as Bianca, Asuka, Liv Morgan and the like. Michael says, trying to help you out on Twitter about Sasha and Naomi, but I get shit for it. You do, Michael, you do. And I've seen that, and I kind of want to apologise, but I also don't. Because fact is, you're getting shit because people don't believe the truth. And I'm familiar with that. I'm very familiar with receiving that crap. So I appreciate the efforts, Michael. I want to make that clear. I appreciate the efforts. And yeah, the people giving you crap for it are completely wrong, but determined. Hector says, Tom, is there a real reason why Tony Khan constantly gloats on Twitter about numbers so much? No other high-level pro wrestling exec does that, like Nick Khan, Cole Bauer, etc. It's just Hot is the only one that does that. Okay, so Tony Khan has elements of politician to him. And what I mean by that is essentially he has one recurring trick that he uses very effectively. If I sit here right now and I say we are the best wrestling show in the world, here a spoiler warning, and I put clips out here saying we are the best wrestling show, if you say it often enough, people might start to believe it. And if people believe this is the best wrestling show, well, chances are I'll get more viewers because they think it's the best wrestling show. This is one of the reasons why it's so beneficial when you guys are out there putting me over, because it makes people believe, oh, this is worth checking out. It's good hype, and everyone needs good hype. Tony Khan creates his own good hype by essentially saying to his base, yeah, we're the best, and everyone knows it. It's slightly Donald Trump, but also there's a reason Donald Trump became president. Wiggly says, I still dream about Hikaru Shida coming to WWE. Unfortunately, no interest to my knowledge. I'm not going to Clash of the Castle. I get this question quite a lot. I'm not going. However, if you want to organise a meetup, that's certainly something I can facilitate. And to be fair, at some point, we could always do some sort of UK meetup. That would be fun. I'd like it. KJ saying, as regards Seth Rollins, 0-5 on pay-per-view this year. Day 1, Chamber, Mania, Backlash and Hell in a Cell. He technically won by DQ at Royal Rumble, so that's technically one, but still not great. Moxley says AJ hasn't won a pay-per-view match since last year's Money in the Bank. Yeah, AJ, another one who's not been getting the rub recently. Justin says, where's Carmella at? They have no storyline for her at the moment. She's in creative hiatus. John says, I see Ronda versus Becky at WrestleMania 39 being a unification match for the women's titles. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're wrong too, mate. Spider-Boss says, Renee Paquette told AEW have to start focusing on other women rather than Britt, and she's absolutely correct. Moxley says, Tom, in your opinion, do you think Jon Moxley's returning to the WWE? The WWE have made an offer to Jon Moxley, to my knowledge. Now that his contract has officially expired, I don't know if he'll take it. And your Hell in a Cell stream look yesterday was fire and so clean. Well, thank you, Moxley. That was down to Sai. We also, during the show last night, Sai sent me a Money in the Bank one. So we're going to have a Money in the Bank overlay as well. These overlays are absolutely fantastic, and I'm very happy using them. I'm absolutely chuffed. I was going to be rotating through a few different ideas and designs, but I picked this one and we've just stuck with it, and it works. I love the light bulb effect. It's magnificent. KJ says, I think to keep Drew over after possibly winning the title from Roman, have to make people somehow actually hate Roman. Roman comes out to a monstrous face pop. He does. Drew's going to struggle to compete with that. Alyssa, welcome. Says, Cody Rhodes needs to be the one to give Roman Reigns first loss. Best story, love to see Roman Reigns see title long Roman Reign. Need to keep long, he can love see Cody Rhodes confront Roman Reigns after WrestleMania. Okay. I'm a little bit lost with that, Alyssa. Not going to lie. But from what I can tell, you want Cody Rhodes to be the one to beat Roman. Sean says, Tony also uses the I have a big announcement all the time. It will eventually backfire on him. It already is doing so. It's having diminishing returns, and that really does show. KJ says, Renee talking bad about AEW? Impossible. But she's just honest. And that's a good thing. Moxley says, do you think we will get face Roman and when? I think we already kind of do, because the fans really want it. And eventually they'll get the way. Spider-Boss says, is it me or SmackDown become as bad as Man United? Well, until we get a Harry Maguire making mistakes every single game, not just quite yet. And we are going to leave it there. We are just over the hour. I just wrapped up the questions and commentary that we've had. This has been Spoiler Warning. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's joined us. A massive thanks to everyone who enjoyed Hell in a Cell, the show that we did yesterday. More than 4,000 views. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm so happy for it. Adam says, who's Cody's replacement for Money in the Bank? Don't know yet. I believe it will be someone such as Kevin Owens, who would have been in the match of Ezekiel instead. For now, though, I hope everyone really enjoys Monday Night Raw. We'll be back on Friday. I'm going to spend a little time sort of working on my throat and hoping for the best, trying to rest up. And I also have all of next week off. So we will be doing a Raw watch party next week. Not this week. Next week, because I have a full week off to basically turn this pipe dream that I had a year and a half ago into a publicly traded company on the UK stock market. Team Colahue lives. Until then, huge thanks to everyone who's joined, everyone who's asked a question, everyone who's clicked like, followed, subscribed, all of that jazz. Thank you everyone. I've been Tom Colahue. You have been fantastic. I'll see you all very soon.